The tech lockdown and no dumbest bill in America. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials. And the millennial joining me today is our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins, who's on the other side of the camera. Thank you, Christopher. And of course, Adam Couture, our producer. This podcast is called The Tech Lockdown. And that's right. The only way you're going to have a lockdown is if big tech allows you or forces you to do it. And that's because big tech is watching. And we know that because on Capitol Hill, we had all these hearings with the two chief tech executives, which we're going to talk about later in this podcast. But first up, on the big tech lockdown, we have Obama, former President Barack Obama, said that Trump is violating institutional norms. You heard that correctly. On CBS News, President Barack Obama, former president, said Donald Trump is violating institutional norms. Of all people, this is what Barack Obama said. Of all people, Barack Obama is making this claim. So we have a number of clips on this interview with Gayle King of CBS News. You probably know Gayle King because she and Oprah are best buds. You know, that's the whole Obama, Gayle King, and Oprah crew. And they're really best buds, and you can tell by her interview it's really not a real interview. It's basically a love fest. In fact, when she's interviewing him, you can see, if you're watching this podcast, if you're listening, you won't be able to see it, but I'll describe it. It's Gayle King basically fawning all over Barack Obama. You can just tell she's in love with this guy, and she would love to be married to him. At least that's the impression that she gives when she interviews him, as with all of her kind of facial expressions and her body movements. It's really obvious. So here's the first of a number of clips where Obama says institutional norms have been breached with Donald Trump with respect to this election. We have that clip, and here it is.
I think we were in a circumstance in this election in which certain norms, certain institutional values that are so extraordinarily important had been breached. That it was important for me, as somebody who had served in that office, to simply let people know this is not normal.
Yeah, this is not normal, says Barack Obama, of all people, who doesn't address the massive mail-in ballots that occurred this particular election and how that has clearly led to fraud, which has been demonstrated, and we know that. We know that now, despite the fact that big tech won't let you even talk about it. But Barack Obama, of all people, talking about institutional norms and how Donald Trump has breached them. And here's the question that I have for the podcast listeners. Barack Obama is really the first president to not have moved from the White House to his original home, which would have been Hawaii, right? Or Indonesia, but certainly Hawaii. And Barack Obama instead, when he left the White House, he moved to Kalorama in Washington, D.C. It's in Northwest Washington, D.C. So he stayed in D.C. because this is his life. Politics, and he's basically running I believe this for a while, he's running a shadow government and has for a long time with the deep state. And that's why he is here talking to Gayle King of CBS News, because he's very concerned that the Democrats are going to get caught with the massive mail-in ballot fraud for this particular election. And I do think that Barack Obama has a lot to hide, I think that's the primary reason he stayed in D.C. He set up a shadow government. This is what I believe. I believe that completely. He set it up with the deep state, and we know this because what did he do? He investigated and spied on a presidential candidate. And then, after the presidential candidate won, he spied on the president-elect, and then continued, in my opinion, probably to have done that all through the 4 years that Donald Trump has been president. So we have Gayle King of CBS News asking Barack Obama a second question, which is, what does it tell you that 72 million people voted for Donald Trump? What a question, right? But listen to Obama's response, and here it is.
72 million people voted for Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. What does that say to you about the state of this country?
Well, what it says is that we are still deeply divided. The power of that alternative worldview that's presented in the media that those voters consume, it carries a lot of weight.
Are you worried about that?
Yes, It's very hard for our democracy to function if we are operating on just completely different sets of facts.
Which in normal times you would say, yeah, maybe there's some truth to that. But because it's Obama saying it, what he's really saying is there should only be one set of facts allowed to be consumed by the American people. You shouldn't have alternative media. And you should have big tech make sure that you are policed so that you can't say certain things. And that the 72 million people that voted for Donald Trump, the only reason why they voted for him is because they have an alternative worldview that is given to them or fed to them by certain media outlets. Obviously, he's talking about Newsmax and One American News and Fox News, as well as, thousands and thousands of websites and podcasts and so forth. And that is what Barack Obama sees. He doesn't see these 72 million people as folks in the United States who have a legitimate reason to have voted for Donald Trump. He sees them as an aberration. I mean, they are, in his mind, without question, deplorables. And they need to be retrained and sent to re-education camps. And by the way, I'm talking about like proverbial re-education camps, not necessarily like the Uyghur re-education camps in China, but re-education camps where you can only listen to certain things. You can only post certain things on the media. You shouldn't be allowed to listen to One American News and Fox News. You shouldn't be allowed to listen to Newsmax. You shouldn't be able to read certain things and share information because, I don't know, you might think differently. You might actually believe in individual rights in the United States. You might believe in free speech. You might believe in the right to bear arms. You might believe in the fact that government serves the people. The people do not serve the government. But nonetheless, that's Barack Obama, of course. Once again, and he does it so well, doesn't he? When you listen to his language, it sounds so good, so soothing, so reasonable. But he is, without question, in my mind, I've thought this for a long time, I've always thought that he is a complete and utter Marxist. I believe that today, just like I believed it the day that he got elected. And I think it's been proven out with the fact that he has chosen with his administration to set up a satellite government once he left office and continued to use the deep state to spy on this president and anyone else who might be his enemy. I believe that. I absolutely believe that. And I think Barack Obama, is terrified. That's why he's doing these interviews. He's terrified of what might come out if Donald Trump were to somehow prevail and get reelected. I think Barack Obama is absolutely terrified. So we have another clip where Gayle King of CBS News talks about a peaceful transition of power in the United States, which of course is an important American principle and institution. It's very important. We all agree with that. But naturally, it's CBS News stoking the fire, saying this president is not going to leave the White House. He's not giving up. He's not going to listen to what the American people have said. So we have that question and Barack Obama's answer, and we have that in the clip, and here it is.
But it's clear as we sit here today, we're not going to have a peaceful transition. I think about John McCain calling, George and Laura Bush welcoming you and Michelle Obama to the White House.
Could not have been more gracious.
I remember you inviting Donald Trump to the White House.
Yep. If you succeed, then the country succeeds.
I wish that you succeed because we want the country to succeed.
Right.
He does not seem to have taken a page out of any of those playbooks.
No.
Oh my gosh. Says the man, the president, the former president of the United States, that spied on another president and clearly did so, clearly knew about it, clearly worked with the deep state to do this, as I said before, and as we've heard on many different news outlets. And he's saying that this president, and of course Gayle King is peppering the whole conversation, he's not going to leave peacefully. Folks, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. The President of the United States, as everyone knows, has every right, along with his campaign team, to have their day in court to demonstrate that there was voter fraud, that there may have been machine issues, that there may have been with Dominion machines, or that there may have even just been, a lack of counting. How that happened, I have no idea. Case in point, in Georgia, not just one county didn't count some, I think, 2,600 votes, But another county miraculously didn't count, I think, 2,100 votes. And both of those counties, the vote skewed significantly for Donald Trump. Now that's because of a recount, a hand recount in Georgia of some 500 plus, of some 5 million plus votes. Think about that. Think about that. 2 counties, miraculously, that are red counties, had votes that weren't counted because the machine chips or whatever they used with the Dominion machines, which, by the way, I mean, clearly this doesn't sound right to me. Somehow they weren't uploaded into the system, so more than 5,000 people's votes weren't counted in the state of Georgia. Because this has happened with these Dominion machines, whether it was human error, which probably should never happen because that's the whole reason you have a voting machine system is to eliminate human error, or whether it was intentional, doesn't matter. What matters is that there should be, in my opinion, a recount in every single swing state, including the swing states that Donald Trump has already been, told that he's won, like North Carolina. Let's do a recount of North Carolina. Let's do a recount of Georgia, which is happening now, of Arizona, of Nevada, of Wisconsin, of Michigan, of Pennsylvania. Quite frankly, I'd like a recount of Virginia too. I know Virginia has turned to a blue state, but there is enough information that's out there about these machines and about kind of ballots that arrived late at night that I would like there to be a recount. I just would. And let's see if there's some issue with these voting machines, and let's see if there is an issue with, the signature cards on these mail-in ballots. Why not? Why do we fear that? But of course, Gayle King fears it, and she's calling it Donald Trump not wanting a peaceful transition. And of course, Barack Obama is all too happy to say, yeah, that's right. Donald Trump doesn't want a peaceful transition. He's going to have to be pulled out of the White House by the military and by guards because he's not going to leave. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about real-time problems with this election, and we're seeing it right now in Georgia, where the election is razor thin, razor close, and they're counting. And apparently tonight we're going to actually have a hard number on what that recount is. And it'll be interesting to find out how many anomalies there are. But that doesn't even include, of course, in the state of Georgia, doesn't even include how many mail-in ballots had the signature cards that didn't match. I can't underscore that enough because Stacey Abrams in Georgia, particularly in Atlanta, has been working overtime to try to say, well, we shouldn't really have to match those signature cards. And who does that? That's why we should have voting in person. Once again, if you can shop at Walmart and Sam's Club, you can sure as heck wait in a line and vote in person. So we also have the final clip of good old Barack Obama, where he's with Gayle King of CBS. And they talk about, of course, the peaceful transfer of power. And here's Obama giving it a lecture about the peaceful transfer of power. You got to listen to this. I mean, it's just ridiculous. The classic Obama lecture. We have a clip on that, and this is the final Obama clip, and here it is.
The peaceful transfer of power, the notion that any of us who attain an elected office, whether it's dog catcher or president, are servants of the people. It's a temporary job. We're not above the rules. We're not above the law. That's the essence of our democracy.
Yeah, so we know that. We know that no one is above the law. There's a peaceful transfer of power, as we just discussed. But of course, Gayle King, she's there shaking her head up and down, yes, you're right. Like even a dog catcher. I mean, even there's a peaceful transfer of power where the dog catcher loses, And I mean, it's so obvious how the media fawns still over this president. The first president in my lifetime, by the way, Barack Obama, who never left Washington, D.C., still lives there because he sees himself as the president. And don't think for one moment that if Joe Biden prevails, that Obama is going to have enormous influence over this White House because he's already working behind the scenes, Obama is, to get all of his old people into these key positions. It's so obvious what's going to be happening. And talk about a country that is not ready for a third Obama term, which is what this would be. And we can only hope that the United States Senate, of course, will prevail in Georgia the Republicans will prevail in Georgia so that the United States Senate will end up being 52 to 48. So speaking of Joe Biden, we have probably one of the dumbest and stupidest, generally speaking, media questions I've heard, which is the media asking Joe Biden about COVID and Donald Trump. And this just happened. This question, you gotta, look, there are two things. First, listen to Joe Biden's response, and you'll know right away where he's going with the response. But first, also listen to the media question. And if you can watch this guy's face, you can tell he was fed the entire question, as they always are. So we have that clip, and here it is.
What do you see as the biggest threat to your transition right now, given President Trump's unprecedented attempt to obstruct and delay a smooth transfer of power?
More people may die if we don't coordinate. If we have to wait until January 20th to start that planning, it puts us behind over a month and a half.
So there you go. The entire year of 2020, the Democrats have used COVID as an excuse to cheat in elections, to scare the living heck out of the American people, and to try to convince the American people that Donald Trump isn't doing his job and that COVID is Donald Trump's fault. And now, of course, in the transition, even in the transition, you have Joe Biden continuing the same playbook, that if there isn't a information sharing session with Donald Trump about COVID, then more people will die. Folks, we already have 2 vaccines. There are already 2 vaccines, okay? And those vaccines are being distributed on a massive scale and manufactured on a massive scale. So once again, they're just using COVID every way that they can to demonstrate to the American people that Donald Trump is somehow incompetent and that Joe Biden is literally the savior, the second coming. Really, that's what they're trying to tell us. And did you hear the question from the media? I mean, that media idiot, this is what we're going to have for the next 4 years. This is exactly what we're going to have. A media, once again, they were fawning over Barack Obama, just like Don King, you heard. And now they're going to be fawning over good old Joe Biden. Oh, you know, isn't it Donald Trump? Can't you hear it? Let's just say Joe Biden prevails. Obviously, I hope that he doesn't. But let's just say Joe Biden prevails and we'll be in like year 2 of his administration. Mr. President, isn't it true that the reason why the economy is really bad because of Donald Trump? I mean, you can just see the next 4 years. That's what they're going to be doing. I mean, it's just disgusting. And they're going to be blaming everything on Donald Trump and COVID, of course. So, podcast listeners, the House Democrats fear losing members to the Biden administration. So listen to this. The House Democrats are concerned that some Democrat congressmen or women will join a Biden administration, assuming Joe Biden wins. Once again, I hope he doesn't. I hope he's not elected by the electors on December the 14th. Hope that doesn't happen. But nonetheless, Nancy Pelosi is terrified that members of the House will join the Biden administration if he does prevail, because if there are runoffs, she's basically saying, well, there are going to be runoff elections if that particular seat is vacated, and it could give control to the Republicans or give the Republicans at a minimum a lot more opportunity to get control. So she's terrified of this. So she's literally telling them, don't join the Biden administration. Stay here in the House because, I mean, what you're seeing is a Democrat Party in the House of Representatives that is at its waning years. It is a dying party. It is. I don't care what anyone says. It's a dying party. They have nothing to offer the American people. They ran on nothing. They just ran on anti-Trumpism. So the Daily Wire carried that story, and here's what it says. Even though President Donald Trump is pursuing legal challenges to the election results, House Democrats are preparing for a Joe Biden administration by urging members not to join his team, worrying that too many lost members could cost the party its majority. The New York Post reported that House leaders, including House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, are asking members to stay out of the incoming Biden administration for fear that Republicans could pick up the vacated seats. Sources told the outlet Sunday that Pelosi and Majority Leader Steny Hoyer, Democrat of Maryland, are both trying to keep their fragile majority by discouraging members from jumping ship to join Biden. Actually, if they're thinking about jumping ship, many of the members in the House who are Democrats, it's probably because they know that they're about ready to lose their seats anyway in 2 years, or that they're going to lose the House majority anyway. And by the way, Nancy Pelosi, isn't she like 80 years old? I mean, and Steny Hoyer, I think he's 81 years old. It's absurd. Why are these people still here? Literally, they have nothing to offer the American people. So get this, podcast listeners. Senator Ted Cruz puts big tech on the hot seat. Yes, that's right. Senator Ted Cruz puts big tech on the hot seat. We have a section on this, of course, in the podcast about big tech coming to Washington. Actually, it was via Zoom. So they weren't physically present in Washington. But big tech comes to Washington, and they are required to come to Washington naturally, in the proverbial sense, to get in front of the Senate and talk about, among other things, tech censorship and why they should have this exemption under Rule 230, Section 230 of the Federal Communications Act. So, look, we have Ted Cruz. He just nails Jack Dorsey. And I got to set this up. So Jack Dorsey, he has this long beard now. And for those of you that don't know, Jack Dorsey is the head of Twitter. He has this long beard. He has a nose ring. And he looks like he just came on Zoom after smoking like a major amount of marijuana. He just kind of has that look. And there's no doubt, I can tell you, there's no doubt in my mind that when you watch Jack Dorsey in these clips, that you'll see somebody who's literally putting his proverbial middle finger up to the United States government and to the American people. He doesn't care. He knows he has this power, and he's going to relish in this power for as long as he has it, until such time as it is taken away or he's regulated in some way. You can just tell. Just look at his attitude. He doesn't care about anything. There's a part of that which is, flipping the bird at the government, which is kind of uniquely American. I do have to say that. It is uniquely American to tell the government, no, I'm not going to do that. To heck with you, make me, all right. But this is different. This is different because these are people that have effective utilities, right? They have become so big in their respective industries that they're like the electric company. You don't have a choice with the electric company. I know that some people say, oh, yes, you do. I can call that company. No, there's really only one choice. Only one company owns the wires and the poles to take the electricity to your house. You really don't have a choice. And that's why they're regulated. That's why we have utilities regulated. I'm sorry, Twitter and Facebook, YouTube, they're utilities now. You kind of need them. There aren't very many places to go, at least not yet, that are equally competitive and fair. So they're utilities and they should be regulated. Dorsey knows this, Jack Dorsey of Twitter. And so what does he do? Just flips the bird to the American people saying, I don't care about the First Amendment. Why should I care? I'm Jack Dorsey. Make me. And he's got the nose ring in, and there's no doubt in my mind that, and I thought this for a while, I don't even think the nose ring is real. I think he just puts it in his nose just once again to make people annoyed, particularly the United States senators. That's just, at least that's what it looks like to me. So Jack Dorsey gets ripped by Ted Cruz, Senator Ted Cruz, concerning his censorship of the New York Post Hunter Biden story. So as you recall, the New York Post basically broke a story about Hunter Biden and corruption about the entire Biden family. The New York Post, of course, as you would expect, put that story on their Twitter site, and Twitter basically eliminated it and locked the story out, prevented them from putting the story out there. Unbelievable. Classic censorship. And so we have Ted Cruz ripping Jack Dorsey about this very issue. We have the first of a number of clips, and here it is.
Mr. Dorsey, I want to focus primarily on Twitter and ask you initially, is Twitter a publisher?
Is Twitter a publisher?
Yes.
No, we are not. We distribute information.
So what is a publisher?
An entity that is publishing under editorial guidelines and decisions.
Well, your answer happens to be contrary to the text of federal statute, particular Section 230, which defines an information content provider as any person or entity that is responsible in whole or in part for the creation or development of information provided through the internet or any other interactive computer service. Let me ask you, was Twitter being a publisher when it censored the New York Post?
No.
So, Jack Dorsey literally saying, Jack Dorsey of Twitter saying, no, Twitter isn't a publisher when it censors, not just in part, but in its entirety, the Hunter Biden story from the New York Post. They were not allowed to post the story. It was locked out, the New York Post, from being able to put the story on their Twitter page. And Jack Dorsey says, well, no, we're not a publisher by not allowing that. So, therefore, Jack Dorsey and Twitter shouldn't be protected under Section 230. They shouldn't be, because clearly they're deciding what you get to see. That means that you are editing things. You're deciding what goes on, what doesn't go on. Everybody knows it. And by the way, Dorsey knows it too. He's just lying through his nose ring. It's lying through his nose ring. He knows it. It's just Dorsey flipping the bird at the United States Senate and the American people, which is incredibly dangerous at this particular point in time because of the fact that, as I said before, these services are utilities. You can't live without electricity, and you can't really, for the most part, get information without these tech utilities. And therefore, they need to be regulated. So we have a second clip of Ted Cruz asking for a written commitment from both Mark Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey. He wants a commitment in writing, which is a great, very, very smart thing, that they will determine and provide to Ted Cruz exactly what they're doing on the editing side and the censorship side. You think they're really going to respond in writing? I don't think so. We have that clip, and here it is.
How many times have you blocked Democratic candidates for office? How many times have you blocked Republican office holders? How many times have you blocked Democratic office holders? Twitter has repeatedly refused to answer that question with specific hard data. Will you commit in this hearing right now to answer those questions in writing?
That's exactly what we're pushing for as we think about building upon 230.
Is that a yes that you will answer those questions in writing?
Transparency, not just of outcomes, but also our process as well.
Is that a yes that you will answer those questions in writing?
We'll certainly look into it and see what we can do.
And actually answer them and not give lawyerly doublespeak about why you're not going to give specifics. Answer them. Will you commit to this committee that you will answer those questions?
We're going to work to answering broader transparency around outcomes.
All right, that's a no. Mr. Zuckerberg, how about you? Will you commit that Facebook will answer those specific questions, cataloging the number of instances in which Democrats in 16, 18, and 20 have been silenced versus the number of instances in which Republicans have been silenced on Facebook?
Senator, I'm not sure if we have that data available, but I will follow up with you or your team.
Yeah, sure. Mark Zuckerberg, the king of data. It's how he makes a living. That's how Facebook makes so much money, is from data. Oh, I don't know if we have that data. Probably not, but I'll let you know. I'll have to get back to you. Another observation is when you look at Jack Dorsey, who has a look of flipping the bird to the American people, compare and contrast that to Mark Zuckerberg, who literally looks like an automaton, like a robot, and it's really frightening, and he literally looks like Big Brother in the movie 1984. Obviously, I'm sure many of you have read the book and many of you have seen the movie. And when you look in the movie, he just looks like an automaton. It looks very imposing and just like, I'm sorry, just utterly like a computer and a crazy guy. That's the way I see him. I mean, obviously he's wicked smart. We all know that. But he has way too much power, just like Big Brother in 1984. Without question. Everybody knows it. So my least favorite, I should say, senator, we'll get to John Kennedy, who is my favorite senator, in a minute. But my least favorite senator in terms of, I don't know, everything, intelligence, is Mazie Hirono. She's a Democrat from Hawaii. So Mazie Hirono I want you to compare and contrast what you just heard from Ted Cruz, asking great critical thinking questions to the big tech companies about Section 230, and compare and contrast that to Mazie Hirono, definitely one of the dumbest senators, if not the dumbest United States senators in America. This is what she chose to ask Zuckerberg, if it's even a question, and Jack Dorsey. Here it is.
What are both of you prepared to do regarding Donald Trump's use of your platforms after he stops being president? Will he still be deemed newsworthy, and will he still get to use your platforms to spread his misinformation?
There are a small number of policies where we have exceptions for politicians under the principle that people should be able to hear what their elected officials are saying and candidates for office.
So it's Mazie Hirono saying you need to do more to stop Donald Trump from speaking. He shouldn't be able to post on Twitter and Facebook. You shouldn't allow that. You need to do more to stop it. I mean, can you imagine? I mean, and the worst part is she believes this. I think there are a lot of hacks who are politicians, right? Who say things and they know that, they don't believe them. Like Adam Schiff, complete and utter hack. He doesn't believe anything that he says. I'm certain of it. Mazie Hirono, I actually think believes what she's saying, which is he shouldn't be able to talk. He shouldn't be, there shouldn't be free speech when you're Donald Trump. That shouldn't be allowed. You guys in the tech companies who are utilities should never allow him to have electricity. You should never allow him to be able to speak freely. And that's literally the dumbest United States senator, in my opinion. So my favorite senator, he really is. He's getting up there. I mean, Senator John Kennedy is a Republican from Louisiana. I love his Southern plain talking way. It's very relatable, and it's also real. And he just gets to, when he questions these two tech titans, Mark Zuckerberg, and when he questions Jack Dorsey, basically he gets to the core of this issue with big tech. And that is, how can you be protected by Section 230? What about letting people decide for themselves? Anyway, John Kennedy gets to the heart of this debate. And you have to listen to this clip. It's really interesting. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. And here it is.
Misinformation about COVID and treatments that could put people in additional risk of getting the disease or not seeking the right treatment if they have it. That those are also things that could cause imminent harm. We've taken the position that
Mr. Zuckerberg, let me interrupt you, and I really do apologize. But I'm going to be cut off in a second, and appropriately so. I'm not saying you're wrong by doing what you just described, but that makes you a publisher. And that creates problems with Section 230. And I just think one point of view is that at some point, we've got to trust people to use their own good judgment, to decide what they choose to believe and not believe, and not try to assume that we're smart and they're stupid, and that we can discern believable information and information that shouldn't be believed, but everybody else is too stupid to do it.
And there you go. There's John Kennedy, who just really nailed it. First, in that clip, you heard Mark Zuckerberg talk about what they won't allow to be said as it relates to COVID on Facebook. So any information that you put on Facebook that relates to, hey, masks are not effective and here's why, Facebook's going to ban that. And they might even ban you from being on Facebook, but they're certainly not going to allow that to be posted. And any kind of disagreement that you might have about COVID and restrictions about COVID, Facebook may also prevent you from posting that as well. And that's what Zuckerberg was starting out with at the beginning of that clip. And then, of course, John Kennedy let Zuckerberg hang himself. Namely, said, well, here's the thing. You just described what a publisher is. You just described the fact that you are deciding what people get to see. That is what a publisher does, because a publisher has an editorial staff that cuts stuff out. that you can see and the stuff out they don't want you to see. That's precisely what Facebook is doing. And so then Kennedy moves forward and then says, and in just an incredibly succinct way, he says, well, you know what? At some point, you got to let people decide for themselves what's real and what's not real. You have to let them read all of the different opinions and different stories on Facebook, and they can choose to read some, they can choose to read all. They can choose, by the way, as an individual, if you're on Facebook, as everyone knows, you can block people so that you don't have to see what they're posting anymore. You can unfriend them and block them. You can do all those things. But Kennedy's point is what's the problem with letting people make their own decisions about what they see and what is real and not real? And that is uniquely American. It is uniquely American to not fear more information, including that information with which you may disagree, including that information which may be offensive. But that's where we are today with the folks who run Facebook and Twitter. They are de facto utilities because you have to use them. And I know some people out there, no, I don't have to use them. Yeah, you kind of do have to use them because they do offer some benefits, let's face it. Even if you don't like them, there are plenty of benefits. One of them is simple, which is just connecting with people that you knew in high school that you haven't seen in years. It's like, oh my God, that's John. He lives in California now. Wow. I mean, that is something that's cool. And you could also look up their profile and find out what they're doing. So that is useful in social media, but we should be able to see and post anything that we want to. And by the way, if you post something that is incredibly, dangerous on social media, let's talk about that. Okay, so let's say you put on social media that if you inject yourself with Clorox, right? bleach. If you drank bleach, all right, I can, that's dangerous, right? That's dangerous because some idiot somewhere is going to go, oh yeah, bleach can kill you, but not with COVID. It's going to solve everything, and might actually do it. Okay, fine. That's not what we're talking about, though. We're talking about a debate on all of the relevant issues of the day and not fearing disagreements and not worrying about who you trigger or don't trigger. And that is what John Kennedy got to the heart of. And I have to admit that he just killed it in this hearing on Capitol Hill with these two tech titans because he really got to the heart of the issue, which is, hey guys, you hung yourself. You are without question editing what people get to see. And you even get to edit whether people even get to be on your platform. And that isn't right. Therefore, you should not have the protections of Section 230. And therefore, we should be able to sue you when you block us or when you decide that you're going to take your algorithm and benefit one person when they're running for election versus the other, without question. So once again, compare and contrast what you just heard from John Kennedy with Cory Booker. So Cory Booker talks about the Stop the Steal campaign and how he was so happy it was removed by Facebook and Twitter. Folks, the hashtag Stop the Steal campaign is a campaign of obviously Trump supporters who believe that this election was stolen, right? It is a legitimate organization and it is a legitimate point of view that people have. It doesn't matter if you ban them. It's still a point of view that they have, which makes it legitimate. So why not let it happen? Why not let those people discuss the fact that they have an issue with the way this campaign and the way this election transpired and let them just put it out there? I mean, there's nothing to fear, right? Except getting to the truth. We're finding it now in Georgia, right? We're finding ballots that weren't even counted. So nonetheless, Cory Booker is happy, Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, happy that Stop the Steal was removed by Facebook and Twitter. Listen when he asks his question, Cory Booker asks his question to Jack Dorsey of Twitter. He calls him Jack. You can tell they're best friends. I mean, what does that tell you? It's like, Jack? I mean, Mr. Dorsey, we had that clip, and here it is.
I appreciate that. I just like to get Jack's, this is information I know. Jack, if you want to just respond on the algorithm, Mr. Dorsey, do you want to respond about the algorithms too? Do you have specific measures that you're taking to prevent your algorithms from boosting false content?
Yeah, so many of the labels did change how the algorithms amplify content.
Yeah, so there you go. Many of the algorithms did change, what you got to see. Basically, that's what they do. That's what they do, which brings us to, and of course you heard Cory Booker call him Jack. Jack, he's my old buddy. I mean, Mr. Dorsey. And that brings us to, of course, The Social Dilemma, which is a documentary that I think everybody should watch. So The Social Dilemma is a documentary, and it's fascinating because it talks about how big tech has intentionally tried to hook you like a drug onto social media. And they literally have teams of people that work just on that particular function, which is, hey, how can we get people to constantly pick up their phone and look at it and find it necessary to go on Twitter or find it necessary to go on Facebook? And one of the ways that they talked about in The Social Dilemma was tagging. And this is, by the way, this is so true. So if you pick up your phone and you see that you have a notification on Facebook and it says, so-and-so tagged you, of course you're going to press that particular tag and find out who it is that tagged you, why they tagged you, where you were when they tagged you, or why they, all that stuff. Of course, it's brilliant. And their point was an entire team worked together just on that issue, knowing that when you tag someone and you were notified that you were tagged, that what would you do? You would go right to your social media and look at it even more, because the whole purpose of Facebook and Twitter is to get you engaged on that platform as many hours as possible every single day. And the point of the documentary was to say, there are only two industries that call their customers users. And Facebook and Twitter call their customers users. So the big tech industry calls their customers users, and drug dealers call their customers users. And I thought, wow, that was really cool, right? It makes perfect sense, because I don't know about you all out there in podcast land, but I know there are times when I've been sitting behind my laptop or behind my my cell phone, and I think to myself, I got to put this stuff down, man. I got to shut it down. I got to walk away. I got to go outside and take a walk. I got to do something else. And that obviously is a very healthy thing, but your brain is literally telling you, I can't do it anymore. I can't take it anymore. So The Social Dilemma dealt with all of those issues, but then it also dealt with something which was, I thought, particularly interesting. And it goes to something that I don't think many in the United States Senate have looked at yet, and it's of a big concern, and that is the social media companies, when they write algorithms, they write them so that when you post something, you constantly are fed back things from other people that are similar. You have similar interests, right? So if you post something about politics, you're going to be given information about politics. If you're on the left, and on the left side of you're progressive or Marxist or whatever, or socialist, and you post something on social media, the chances are you're going to find a lot of stuff and a lot of people who think just like you. So you kind of get siloed, because the algorithms are written in such a way that that's only the information that you're going to see. You're really not probably going to see a lot of information with which you disagree. And I think that's dangerous. And The Social Dilemma documentary, they literally said the same thing. They're like, you know what, this is really kind of dangerous. And the reason it is dangerous is simple. It's dangerous because we're separating ourselves and segregating ourselves. We're becoming balkanized from social media. And that's not good for our mental health, but it's also not good for our country. And many of the individuals who are ex-employees of Facebook and ex-employees of Twitter or ex-employees of Alphabet who were talking in this documentary and were being interviewed, one of the things that they were all saying kind of the same thing, which is, my big concern is that social media is actually driving us to becoming a more divided nation, and a nation that is so divided that it could lead to civil war. And to their credit, these ex-employees of Facebook and these ex-employees of Google and these ex-employees of Twitter are genuinely concerned, because their thought process was, and they were demonstrating it with facts, that the algorithms actually, whether intentionally or not, are pushing people towards that end conclusion, which is to not even be able to talk to the other person and just say, well, that's it, I'm going to cancel you. Well, what does canceling do? Canceling at the end of the day is basically kind of like the same thing as saying, I want you to die. I mean, it's dangerous. It's incredibly, it's wrong, obviously, and it's dangerous, but the point is that social media is doing just that. So we need a United States Senate to take the leadership, to be able to properly regulate big tech. It is time for this to happen. I mean, it is high time. And I will tell you this, there is no way that a Democrat-controlled United States Senate is going to regulate big tech. It's going to require a Republican-controlled Senate to do it. And I can only hope that there are enough Democrats in the United States Senate who quietly, behind the scenes, agree that something needs to be done to regulate them, and that needs to be done sooner rather than later, because by just looking at Zuckerberg in these pictures and when he's on Zoom and looking at Jack Dorsey, they don't care. They're in charge. They are actually more powerful now than the United States government. Let me say that again. They are more powerful now with respect to the spread of information and what you get to see than the United States government. It's unbelievable. And so that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. A special thanks to our assistant producer, Christopher Hopkins, and of course, our producer, Adam Katora. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Parler, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.